Welcome to In Alignment. I'm Annie.
And I'm Marissa. You were meant to find this today, and we're so glad you're here.
Welcome back to In Alignment. Today, we're going to talk about building confidence today, which I think relates to a lot of aspects of life, from dating to starting over to building a company to changing careers, just navigating your day to day. One thing that we've been thinking a lot about lately is we launched a beta for The Shift, which is our platform that will be coming this summer. So many of the women kind of in our target demographic, The Shift is for women, are in this area of life, late 20s, early 30s. If you know about astrology, a lot of women are going through their Saturn return at this time. There's a lot of change, and navigating that with confidence, even when you can't see what's on the other side of a trust fall, of a big change, whether that be career, relationship, starting over, trying something new, moving out of one identity and into another as we kind of grow and evolve, it can be really scary and uncomfortable. And I think learning tactically how to build confidence is a really grounding force that can move you through these transitions with a bit more ease. So it's a topic that we have been thinking a lot about. We've navigated personally, and we want to just kind of informally talk about today, and hopefully some of this lands.
Yeah, I think over the last few weeks, as we've put more out there for Shift, I've been reconnecting with people from other parts of my career and other parts of my life. And one of the things that I think is really interesting is so many people are wanting to put themselves out there more, wanting to start businesses or whatever. And even though we're in the early days, it's not like we've made this big success. People are coming to me saying, like, how are you putting yourself out there? It seems so natural. And it's really funny to me because, Annie, we've talked about this a million times, but it is not natural to talk to a camera and post about these things and like talk about these things, write about them on Substack. Putting yourself out there is inherently scary. And I think that the misconception, at least when I'm talking to people, I'm like, oh, no, no, no. I'm just doing it anyway. Like, I'm certainly not, there's no inherent quality in me that is making me comfortable. I'm very uncomfortable. The more I do it, the more comfortable I get. But I'm not like naturally comfortable, you know?
But I also think when we are uncomfortable, we're worried about somebody else's perception. And I think that there's like a fearlessness involved with doing something in life that you really want to do, whether that's start a company or start expressing yourself in a more authentic way, or changing your career, or putting yourself out there emotionally in a relationship, or breaking up with someone that isn't the right fit with you. Like, there is like a fear of how are you going to be perceived by others. And I think something that you and I have realized but are continuing to work on is, who cares? Like, this is your one life. You get one shot at this. Why not do the things that light you up with like fearlessness? And it's funny because we're trying to test all these different channels to grow our following and community. And that was really hard for me, of like, oh my God, I don't want to put a camera in my face and record and put this out to literally the world. And on TikTok, you can see people that are looking at your page. And at first I was like, oh my God, like all of these people from middle school and high school are looking at my page and looking at these videos. What are they thinking? Are they sharing it? And then you kind of hit a moment of being like, so what if they're sharing it? My dream is to build this company. I believe in what I'm saying. It doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. It's a hard place to get to.
On the note of like, who cares? It's so funny that we're talking about this because I have always cared so much. And it's held me back in a lot of ways. Like, it's held me back in relationships because I was constantly finding a version of myself that would be well received in dating, or viewing my relationship as like, what would people think if we broke up? Or I was just so concerned with other people's perceptions of my career, what I look like, who I'm dating, everything else, that was overriding my own happiness. And I think that we tend to do that when we don't have a strong sense of self. And what I think we should totally talk about today is like, how do you even get there? Because when I look back, even to like, let's just say 2 years ago, 2 years ago, I would have never been able to do any of the things that we're doing now. The thought of getting any sort of negative reception or failing publicly it was paralyzing to me. Like, I couldn't possibly have overcome that. And now, to your point, it's like, oh my God, like, I'm not going to not do the things I want to do and try and put myself out there. And there's also like a trust that it's gonna like bring the right people and the right things into my life too. And so I'm like, how did we get from point A to point B? Like, I feel like we should revisit that journey.
Marissa, I'm almost, like, tearing up as you said that because it it's really I wanna talk about in detail of, like, literally how did we get to point A to point B, but it's so true. Like, this fall was a really hard period. Honestly, I won't speak for you, but just from knowing you so well, like, in both of our lives, we went through a big transition this fall, separately, but at the same time. And at that time, there was a lot of shedding. I went through a big breakup. I left venture capital, which was the only career that I had ever been in. I was in it for 6.5 years. There was so much that was shed. There were even friendships that I decided, this is not serving me. This does not fulfill me. I don't think this person like genuinely deeply cares about me. And I'm going to release it and see what comes in that space. Wanting to start a business. And for so long, I was so frustrated. Wanted to start a company. So I started my first business and I had a business, but I didn't have the it. And it was driving me insane. I was like, what is the actual company, the actual idea? And it wasn't until I let go of things. I left VC full time. I went through that big breakup with the amazing guy, but not my person. I moved back to Boston. I like opened myself up to receive. And I think a lot of that is shedding. But this fall was a major trust period in my life of you have to remove things and be brave enough and trust yourself that the things that you crave at your core are going to come and open yourself up to receiving them. And so much of the confidence, I think, is built in the transition. And then what I think is so crazy, and I want to talk about that, is like where I think this conversation should exist is that the confidence is built in the uncertainty. But when you sit in it and you trust yourself and you do the hard work in it, hard work, but also happy, joyful work of just leaning. It doesn't always have to be this heavy self work. It is unbelievable what effortlessly falls into place. And like you and I are an example of that. Like I didn't go out seeking like I want Marissa to be my co-founder. Like how can I convince her to be my partner? We effortlessly just fell into this relationship, this dynamic, the business idea came, like life kind of clicks. Even some of my closest friends have moved into my life without force, but with great trust and confidence, and often after periods of deep uncertainty.
Yeah.
So I think that I'm explaining this arc that I've experienced personally over the past year, and I know you've experienced a version of it as well. But I think that what we're talking about today, like exists, the confidence buildings exist in the transition.
Yeah. I think so. The transition, the reason I think that is because when everything is stripped away from you, you have to be okay with who you are. And okay, I'm going to try not to make myself cry, but I worked my entire life to protect myself by having a very high salary, a career that I was really proud of. I felt like, I worked at Peloton for years. I worked at startups. I was the VP of product at a startup surrounded by people who had really been successful in their career. I had back-to-back long-term, very steady relationships that were really non-toxic, like really good human beings that I trusted. And I had a beautiful apartment, had very close relationships with a lot of my family. I had great friends that many of which have been friends of mine since middle school, high school, college. And I did that thinking I was doing everything right, but what I was avoiding ever doing was trusting myself. Like I had built up so much protection around myself. And what that led to was I was constantly adjusting the version of me in the world to make sure I maintained all of these things. And so I was pushing down feelings, or if I was unhappy in my career, if something was wrong, that came very second because I needed to be accepted. I needed to have these things to feel okay. And you want to talk about shedding, literally every single thing I listed, except for my friends and my mom and sister, but like everything else gone in the last year. My career, first time in my literally since high school that I haven't had a that I went without a job or an income. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like I knew I wanted to start something, but same with you, I didn't have that my apartment, had to move out of my apartment, lost my relationship. My father passed away, like everything around me went away and I was left with myself. And I was like, if everything else is gone and like it really reminds you that we are the only thing that we can count on, you start having to become really comfortable with who you are. And I almost like don't think you can get there without having some degree of shedding. Like if you still have all of the stuff that is not serving you around you in your life, I don't know if you're in the place almost to be able to really find out who you are. Like you have to let some things go to find out who you are.
Well, I also think that so often who we are is dependent on how we're received. Like for me, my identity was always tied to going to an Ivy League school, graduating top of my class, being in a prestigious industry, living in a place like New York. My self-worth was entirely predicated on differentiating myself because I thought if I was doing better than average, then I would be safer. In my identity, like if you would ask me to describe myself 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, it would have been, like, extremely hardworking, which of course is true, but also loves the hustle culture grind, like, there would have been nothing in that description that is softness, slowness, creativity, joy, expansion, goofiness, silliness, love, like, leaning into the coziness of life almost, and I think that I say that because everyone has their version of it, like, my protective response was a lot of it was also rooted in insecurity. I'm dyslexic, so I struggled in school for so much of my life. Like in middle school, I was getting C's in science and math, and I didn't understand why, and it was so frustrating to me, and I was embarrassed. And so I swung in the other direction of, well, if I can figure out how to perform at a really high level academically and get myself into these really prestigious schools or really prestigious careers, then that can become my identity and that can make me feel safe.
No,
So, I say that my, like, protective response, like, started rooted in a deep insecurity.
my protective responses were also insecurity. Like we had, because my family had lost all their money, because my dad was kind of disappeared and was an addict, I wanted to appear financially secure, well off. I wanted to have a pretty life. I wanted to show that I could have stable relationships, that I didn't have like daddy issues. All of my biggest fears were the things that were most important for me to like prove everyone wrong. Everyone, as if
Yes.
everyone's like cares.
100%. It's so true. And I think that, if I'm trying to like explain how this happened for me and for you and for so many people is it starts as almost an insecurity and then we over index on it as a way to keep ourselves safe and it becomes our identity. And I think sometimes we need those things to be shed exactly as you said to be like, well, what exists underneath it? Like in the thick of VC in New York City and hustle culture and working 24/7. And I remember I would date or I would like, meet new friends and I would lead not to show off or brag, but out of insecurity with like, this is what I do for work. This is where I went to school. And it was because I was like, if I say those things, maybe the chance of me being liked and accepted is higher. So I wasn't even leading with my authentic self because I didn't know who that was. So sometimes, whether we have the awareness on our own of like, hey, this has become an unhealthy relationship. Maybe I should shed this and figure out what's underneath it. Or most often the case, life comes in and pulls it out. And in that space of it literally being ripped out from underneath you, you have to figure out who you are.
Totally. And when you're so we've talked about this with dating because I think something that's funny, and I've talked about this, not all of my friends are like this. Like we've talked about this in our core. I'm a people pleaser. You are not a people pleaser. And one of the places that's come out for me a lot in my life has been in dating because and it's subtle. I describe it more as like a chameleon. I have all of these vast life experiences. I've been in a situation where my family had money. I've been in a situation where we had none. I've spent 10 years in New York. I'm from the South. One side of the family's Jewish. My dad's side's Christian. I've traveled. I went to a big state school, but then also went to a very exclusive boarding school in New England. Like the diversity of experiences and kind of aspects of fragments of my personality I have, I would almost treat as like a menu box to play into based on who I was talking to. And my goal when I went on a date was I want him to like me. And that I was so unconcerned of like, wait, do I like him? It was, I want him to like me. And so I would I wasn't telling any lies. I was perceptive and I've always been pretty empathetic. And so I was able to get a sense of what is that person looking for? What will they like about me? And then that's kind of like the direction I would go. And it's really lonely because all of a sudden you're like, I don't really feel like this person knows me. Or if you're like, hey, I don't think we're compatible, which, was nearly impossible for me to ever tell someone, um, they would be like, we're so compatible. And I've looked back, this is all like years ago before my most recent relationship. And I'm like, oh, they thought I was compatible because I was telling them that we were compatible by hiding 85% of my personality. And also, I didn't know
Yeah.
what that side of my personality was. I genuinely, until like the last year, would have told you that I didn't really like nature. I was like, I'm a city girl. I'm a New York girl. Now I'm like, I literally have to walk with my feet in the grass, you know?
Yeah. So then my question for you is like you're dating and you're connecting with people and you're entering into relationships off of like showing them parts of your menu that are going to connect with them and make them choose you. What was fulfilling for you in the relationship? Was it the security of being chosen?
Yeah.
And did you notice you were missing an authentic connection?
Yes. Well, because the whole goal is now, okay, shit, I like need to be chosen and now I need them to stay. Because obviously, when you're a big people pleaser, a huge thing that comes with that is like oftentimes a fear of abandonment. You're people pleasing to keep the people around you happy, to keep them in your life, to stay in good graces and to be chosen and whatever. And that can lead to very, very lonely relationships. I mean, I'm lucky that that hasn't always been like I in the last few years did learn to be truly myself and learn that that person could be loved and accepted. But it's scary if you start a relationship off without really showing yourself and you're in this game of subtly revealing things about you as time goes on. It creates even more unsafety, I think, because you have this feeling, and I've like written a lot about this, but I had this constant fear, not just romantically, but in my career too, that if people found out about me, that I would lose everything. It's like my status in this relationship with my friends in my career is resting on this very manicured image of me. And if they really knew the truth about my then I wouldn't have any of this. And so it feeds into itself. The more you feel that way, the more you aren't yourself. The more you aren't yourself, the more you think your true self is unlovable. The more you aren't yourself, the more you lose who your true self ever was. And you don't even know how to find your way back to them until everything's stripped away and you have nothing left to lose. And you're like, what do I even like? Who am I?
Yeah. I'm not a people pleaser, interestingly, but I didn't let people see the real me. So many of my relationships up until my past relationship, I didn't show my real self. So I wasn't people pleasing or being a chameleon, but it was I was showing them the tip of the iceberg and not what was underneath. But because I didn't know what was underneath, like I was so uncomfortable in my own skin. And I had this like, little moment, which is a really beautiful moment. But I always thought, and this is what I showed in relationships, like, oh, I'm a bright red color. Like I'm so red. I'm so ambitious. I'm so driven. I'm so strong. I'm so independent. I'm such a hustler. I have relentless energy. And like, yes, a lot of that is true. But there's also a soft side to me. And I was so uncomfortable with it. I remember even I used to be very uncomfortable hearing my own voice. Like if I heard my own voice back on like a voice memo or a recording, I would literally cringe. My skin would crawl.
Right.
And it was like intimacy and vulnerability that I heard in my own voice that made me be like, oh my God, get that thing away. But like I could look at my resume, I could look at my LinkedIn, like that was comfortable for me. My ex-boyfriend, who's a fantastic, amazing guy. We dated for 2.5 years. 2 months into dating him, and we had known each other for a while, so he definitely knew me. But I was not showing him the real me at first. It was like very much this like bright red. I didn't even know that there was another color or side to me, but a very bright red side to me. And that is what I led with. I thought that was impressive. I thought that's what would make people stay. I also didn't want to see another side of me. I was like, this is easier. Like, let's stay surface level. And we were away. It was a long weekend, and it was my ex-boyfriend and two of my best college friends. And we were standing in the kitchen and we were playing a fun game of like, what's everybody's color? And I was like, oh, I'm bright red. And my boyfriend at the time goes, no, you're not. And I was like, no, I'm like bright red. And he's like, a little bit, yeah, but you're really light pink. And I was like, "What the hell does that mean? Like, what the I'm not like a bunny. Like, what? I'm not light pink." And I was insulted, and I literally was like, "This guy doesn't know me." And we kept dating, and I was like, he sees like he's not seeing my ambition, he's not seeing my drive. I am so light pink. I'm 60 to 70% light pink and like a fraction red. Light pink is like what is underneath the iceberg. And for me, that relationship was one of the most transformative relationships of my life because I was so seen, not for my accomplishments, but for my softness. And I almost needed something to hold my hand to walk me into that side of myself and be like, this is lovable. This is safe. This is beautiful. Like, let's expose this. Let's lean into this. And I literally think we are obviously not together. I'm in a different relationship, but like the purpose of that relationship, there were so many purposes. I learned so much about dating and myself, but was having somebody else hold a mirror up to a side of yourself that you can't see or you don't want to see on your own and helping you walk into it.
Totally.
And I think that sometimes we see that ourselves in that way, like a mirror through someone else. But yeah, that was really transformative. And then I was like, whoa, I'm light pink and oh, I'm gonna own this. And it feels really good.
Literally, as soon as you said, "What color are you?" I'm not kidding. My response for myself was gonna be light pink. I was like, "That's my well, that's also my favorite color," but I still feel I don't know. It's funny that you say that because I think I actually maybe have more red than I've ever acknowledged. Like I think I like to come across as very like sweet and like docile, and then actually I have a lot more like fierceness inside of me that I am allowing to come out more. So it's kind of funny in the inverse. But yeah, what you're saying also about the mirror, that is what I'm starting to realize is the point of a lot of relationships. We have been, as we're working with more women, we're having a lot of women come to us and say, like, truly just unable to wrap their mind around their relationship ending. And I think there's a lot of like, what was even the point of this? Or like, there's just this, if it didn't end in marriage, it feels like this huge wasted thing. And I get that because I also felt that way for a long time. And I see relationships very differently now. I'm not saying that you shouldn't like maybe want that you can want whatever you want. But I'm saying that relationships are some of the most impactful learning experiences for who we are. And I read a really interesting who wrote this. I can never remember where I read anything. And I swear this wasn't a TikTok. This was like a book. But it was about the fact that we as human beings, when we're independent by ourselves, we are very good at not bumping up into like our edges, right? Like the things that sort of maybe bother us, we can protect those. We can protect our like wounds. But when you're in the context of a relationship and someone gets really close to you, particularly an intimate relationship, especially if you live together or you're spending a lot of time together, you are inevitably going to start bumping up into things and they're going to trigger you and they're going to bother you and you're going to bother them. And you have to look at yourself. I mean, ideally, I think, not a guarantee, but like ideally you look at yourself to be like, ooh, that hurt. Why? Or like, what is that bringing up in me? And I think a lot of relationships, even if they weren't meant forever, they aren't the right fit, massively change and improve who we are as people and kind of catapult us into a future level of ourselves. And I think a lot of people have this narrative of like, oh, I need to be single to work on myself. I partially just because I've been in a relationship for so much of my life, I've done so much work on myself while in a relationship. And like the context of a relationship really helped me.
I often equate relationships as do you know when you try on an outfit and you stand in front of the mirror and the front looks great? Well, you know the little hand mirrors that you hold up and you turn around to see what the back of your outfit looks like? A relationship is literally that hand mirror. You can be like, oh, these jeans are so baggy in the back, or this is too tight, or like, I need to change this top, whatever it may be. You see parts of yourself that you can't see on your own. And it should never be shameful. Like, we are human beings, we are emotional people. There's also this narrative of, I have to do relationships right. There is no right. And I think that we can be too harsh on our partners, even of like, my partner starts here and I start here. And just because they're not giving me exactly what I want, or our needs are different, or styles are different, we shouldn't write people off completely. Or if we mess up once or we come in a little anxious or maybe a little avoidant, we shouldn't be like, "Oh my god, I'm not capable. I'm so messed up. I ruin everything. I shouldn't be in a relationship." We are all humans with emotions, with past experiences, with things that we're afraid of. And I think the beauty of a relationship is doing that dance both with yourself and with someone else to learn and grow and adapt. Like relationships are so dynamic. And I also hate the narrative of like relationships should always be easy. I think, yes, they should be easy. You should have a genuine, authentic, natural connection with someone. You should not be screaming and fighting, but like healthy conversation of like, this made me feel this way. Can we talk about this? And owning parts of yourself and self awareness and having patience as the other person grows and evolves. We do some of our best growth in personal self discovery in relationship to other people. And it does not just have to be romantic.
Yeah.
So it makes me so sad too when women are like, I'm bad at relationships. I need to fix myself before I enter into a new one. No one is bad at anything. We are all meant to connect and experience.
I think you're right. It's a matter of being able to connect. I do think though, you have to have a certain level. I think if you really don't love your like, if you're in a really bad place emotionally and you do not love yourself and you think that the love from someone else is going to be the thing that fixes you, that's gonna make you feel better or whatever, that is a losing game. But if are you just haven't found the right person yet and you haven't found the right connection yet, that is where I, like, totally agree that, like, there is really someone out there for everyone, and I think we've also talked about this, like, ad nauseum, but one of the problems with sort of, like, the wellness, mental health culture is this push towards everything needs to be so easy. I need to protect myself. I can't handle that. That's triggering for me. That's bad for me. Cancel the plans. Don't go to your friend's birthday dinner. Break up with him. And it's like, things are we need to, like, be able to push ourselves a little bit, and that includes if a partner does something that makes us reactive, instead of pulling away and running away, I think it's worth looking and saying, "Why did that upset me?" Is it, obvious? Let's put aside like someone doing something horrific to you, but just something that like triggers you, right? Or if you're being able to have hard conversations, being able to work through challenges in both romantic relationships and with your friends, doing things that you don't want to sometimes because it's going to be good for your relationships. We've lost the plot on that one, I think.
There's like two camps. There's people who don't want to disrupt the peace because they don't want to be left. And they're like, any instability could mean that I'm not easy enough, or I'm not go with the flow enough, or I'm not lovable enough. If I show any form of weakness or intimacy or vulnerability, maybe I'll be left. And it's that fear that we're trying to protect ourselves from. Um, and then I think on the other extreme, we want to run too quickly.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of the hypervigilance. One of the things that I've also realized about myself is that I'm very good at the push-pull dance. Like, if I feel like I'm suddenly caring more, I will pull all the way back. And no way are we are not gonna have this power imbalance. And then typically, that person will push forward. And it's this dance that you're playing. And maybe I'm playing it with myself. Maybe they're playing too. Maybe they have the same proclivity. But that is not a healthy relationship. And also, I always thought that I was really good at relationships because I never fought. And I mean, never fought. I mean, no arguments, like really, really never fought. And I've come to realize that that is my way of being, my thing that I need to work on, right? Is like, that is not healthy to never have a conversation or an argument. That means I am someone, it's me, it's them, it's both of us. We are not expressing our needs or our thoughts. And we're in this cycle of trying to read each other's minds and push and pull based on energy. And like, that's a whole mess. So it's funny because sometimes people are like, we fight all the time. And historically, I was like, well, I've never fought with my boyfriend. So clearly your relationship is bad and mine's perfect. But now I'm like, there should be some fighting or arguing.
The arguing one is so interesting because it's like the intention behind the argument. Is it because you're being really open and honest of, "Hey, this didn't sit well with me," or I'm realizing that, like, this is a difference that we have. Can we talk about it? Can we learn to understand each other better? It should be we can disagree. I can try and understand you. We can get upset about something and still feel safe in the construct of the relationship and also in ourselves. And that middle ground of like neither extreme is really scary because both extremes were protecting ourselves. But in the middle ground, you're just fully putting yourself out there. You're not saying, I need you to fight and prove your love for me so I feel safe. You're not saying, I'm going to go away immediately, like, and get out before you can. We're in a disagreement because I fundamentally feel something. I love you. I'm being vulnerable. I'm expressing my core self. And I'm also staying right in the relationship and going nowhere.
I
And
think,
that's
yeah, I mean, it's funny, I can't even like begin to relate to the other end of the spectrum because I've so firmly been planted on my end of the spectrum. But, we almost like tying this back to the beginning when we were talking about careers. I think one of the reasons that I never advocated for myself, or I would wait a really long time in relationships to advocate for myself, or I would do it in such a way that like couldn't be argued with, was because of two things. One was like my primary need above all of my other needs was being chosen and not being abandoned. So I could basically sacrifice everything else as long as I was keeping that person happy and keeping that person with me. And the second was when you're doing that for long enough, you lose sense of what your needs even are and who you are. And so when I kind of went through this shedding period in the last year and everything was pulled away, my biggest takeaway was like, I really don't know who I am at all. And I want to talk a little bit about the process of how to come back to yourself because I think it's one thing to say, okay, shed it all. Like, obviously, that's terrifying. And I don't think either of us really did it 100% by choice. Like, we did walk away from certain things, but like, I don't think we would have eyes wide open chosen to go through all of the all at once, the full shedding periods that we did. Like there was some universe push in those directions. But like if you are there and you are, going through a breakup, you are whatever, reconnecting with yourself. You did it too. Like how did you even start to think about that?
first, I was at my lowest point when I reconnected with myself.
Me too.
I was like, "Whoa, we don't have anything validating you anymore. We don't have," as I said, I went through a big breakup. Guy that I thought I was gonna marry, like, yes, he was my best friend, and yes, it was an incredibly amicable relationship and breakup. There was fortunately I think it makes it harder, so I won't even say fortunately. It was really sad. It was really sad, and I was left alone with myself. I left VC full time to start a company. I did not have a full time job or an income. I was living by myself. I had time alone. I was starting over in so many ways. And it's almost like all of those things that were filling my cup or giving me a sense of safety or validation or affirmation that I'm safe, that I'm worthy, that I'm okay are not there anymore.
Yeah.
Well, what is there? You know what's there? My morning routine, my cup of coffee that I love, sitting in my bed and meditating and journaling so honestly because no one's ever going to read it. And I have this whole hour to my space to brain dump and flush out and think through everything on my mind. A walk listening to my favorite song on repeat, creative time, vision boarding my dream home on Pinterest, writing my manifestation list for my dream partner. Obviously, I do not recommend that immediately after a breakup, but once you've had time and you through it and processed it and you are ready to start thinking about that next step, it can be a really beautiful and encouraging exercise. Leaning into friends that like genuinely just brought me joy and saying no to the plans that didn't. Then I started to be like, what is underneath? Cooking, cooking dinner for myself. Like sometimes when there's a lot of shedding, there's also increased amount of time. And like, how can we lean into that time? I know for you, Marissa, Pilates and long walks and
Yeah.
eating really healthy food and being in nature, that almost starts feeding you the manual of who you are and what fulfills you. And it's like
Yes.
fun.
It's so fun when you start. Okay. I had this moment where I was like, okay, Marissa, we might never again have this much time. Like, I was like, I have no job. I have no kids. I, at the time, had a partner who was busy as hell starting his company. I was like, no one in the world has as much time on their hands as I do. Also, all my friends have full time jobs. People are busy. Like, I was so at a loss with what to do with myself because I couldn't just, you're not going to start a company at your lowest point, forcing yourself to think about what company you're going to start. That's where I kind of started was I did start reading some on the woo woo side and some just frankly like scientific things about where your energy goes, things flow. Like, and I started to really believe that, like, in order for my life to be great, I need to be happy first. And then once I was very clear on that, my goal is to be happy in my own skin and without anything else. I believed truly and deeply that that happiness would unlock my future. And so then the game was, all right, how are we going to make ourselves happy? And I started reconnecting with things that I really love. To your point, stuff as simple as like I was walking for hours on the water in Manhattan, listening to music, listening to podcasts that inspired me. Sometimes I was running and crying and listening to Taylor Swift because I needed to cry. I running and crying to the song So Long London is maybe the best feeling in the world, but that tells you a lot about me. I started dancing, I started writing, I started connecting with women. Like one thing is I am a very social person and having one call on the calendar of someone who I found interesting, inspiring, or just reconnecting with an old friend. And Annie, you were one of those people. And that is literally how we met and how this company came to be. And all of the work that I did in that time turned into this. And so, like, by making myself happy, by doing the things that brought me joy, literally talking on the phone with you, talking about these realizations that I was having, becoming who I am, like all the kind of crazy things, and watching as all of a sudden my sleep was better, my health was better. All of these things started to snowball where even though on paper I hadn't figured anything out, I was like, okay, but I might be the happiest I've been in a really long time. And that is worth something.
It is literally in the small details of the shedding that I think that we start building back the understanding of who we are underneath it all. It's like in those tiny, tiny moments, which is why I always recommend to create the favorites list, like every month. Just write a list of the little things that spark joy, like the salmon bowl that you love, the coffee shop, the song, the walk, the friend, the part of the day, the outfit, the memory, the tiniest little things. The culmination of all of those things almost start rewriting the script that has always been in you, but guides you back to yourself.
And then I also loved the concept of treating myself almost like a child that I was caring for because I mean, the stuff that we went through, and for anyone who's going through heartbreak, we've compared it to it's like it's true grief. It's like having a death in the family. It's like being diagnosed with an illness. It is a physical sensation that is so brutal that you can't ignore it. You have to treat it like you are like the same way you would treat yourself if someone passed away. And for me, going through so much grief, so much heartbreak, so much like truly grieving of just my life and who I was and what I thought my life would look like at once, I was like, I have to really treat myself like a little girl. And so my self-care routine became the mindset behind it became different. It was like we're now doing these things to feel well, to feel okay, to like have less, less pain. And so that is when I started making very elaborate baths with like Epsom salts and bath bombs and candles. And like I was doing that nightly because it was a way to make myself feel good. Or like, we've talked about the face rolling and doing Pinterest and just like I was genuinely letting like what would feel good right now guide my every move. When you have that much free time, like what else are you gonna do anyway? And so that was like my guiding question of like, what is gonna take me from feeling bad to feeling a little bit better? As long as it wasn't like hard drugs, I was gonna do whatever my mind wanted to do.
Totally. Well, I think joy is always our guide. Like we talk about like aligned action in life. And I always look at it in is ego and authenticity. And I think joy is most often rooted in authenticity and shoulds are most rooted in ego. And then there's a time and place because doing hard things is really important. Like I should go work out. I should go on that hard run. I should go to that hard workout. That's a should that sometimes we need to push through. Like I'm not saying never do anything hard,
My
but I
taxes.
think what was that?
My taxes. I finally just did my taxes.
Necessary should. There's necessary shoulds that also build resilience and capability. that make tapping into your authentic self easier. So we have to differentiate. And I think a really beautiful question to ask yourself is, well, what is the intention? Is the intention behind going to this workout to get smaller so that I'm more liked by this guy that I'm dating? Or it's so I feel like I fit in better with my friend group or I look better in a photo I'm going to post on social media? Okay, well, that's really not the right intention. So maybe that workout isn't the best idea. If the intention is that I know I always feel better after I work, I feel really empowered when I lift heavier, I sprint hard, go do the thing. And I think that when the intention is building capacity and building resilience can make leaning into joy and finding your authentic self easier because that is another way to strengthen that relationship with yourself.
Yes.
But I think joy is a compass and like we talk a lot about taking aligned action. Like you can have awareness, but awareness needs to be coupled with change to actually transform your life.
Yes.
And aligned action is what you do on a microscopic level over and over and over again that accumulates into radical transformation. And oftentimes, the most aligned next step is often rooted in building resilience, building capacity, or building joy, leaning into joy. Joy is our greatest guide.
Basically, joy is like the manifestation of like what is making our soul come alive. And what makes our soul come alive, what brings us a lot of joy, I think is to to get a teensy bit spiritual, I think that's our purpose. I think if you're looking for your purpose in this life, if you're a purpose driven person and you're doing something every day that you hate, that doesn't feel good to you, that doesn't come naturally to you, you're not proud you don't like see the big picture, you're not in your purpose. But when you are, the feeling of being in your purpose is actually a very joyful feeling. You're like, I feel so lit up by this. I feel so good doing this. And to tie this back to our conversation at the beginning about confidence, I actually think both of us, our confidence to put ourselves out there to risk our savings, our reputations, or whatever we're putting on the line essentially by putting ourselves out there and doing this, it's because we feel so much actual joy doing it that it's like, you're not gonna bring me down by saying something to me about it. Like, I feel so in my purpose and in my element that I feel very guided in this. Like, not to be, like, super woo-woo, but, like, I feel it's very natural to do this when it's coming from that place. Whereas before, I would have never posted on TikTok because it would have been for validation. And if you're posting for validation, if you're doing something out of a need for validation, then anyone criticizing you is going to hurt 10 times more. But if you're doing something because it's your purpose and you're full of joy, some random person's opinion is not going to even graze you.
And also anybody like sharing your thing and making fun of you or sending or stalking your TikTok page, like they've got their own shit to deal with. It's not your
Well,
problem.
the
Like a
thing,
really confident person is going to look at someone else putting themselves out there, whether they agree with what they're doing or not, and being like, wow, good for them. They have the courage.
not to, compliment myself, but I've really stopped talking shit in that way. You know what I mean? Like, I look back on eras of my life when I was more gossipy or more judgmental or thinking things were cringe. And I can see now that a huge underlying cause of that was jealousy and discomfort in, like, almost, yeah, something adjacent to jealousy, which was like they're doing something that I wish I could do and I'm not doing. And so their courage and their bravery and their being themselves was threatening to me in a way that made me want to tear it down. And now when I see someone doing something, whatever it is that's like lighting them up, it really touches me. I find it really beautiful. When I see someone walk away from getting married, when they've sent out their wedding invitations, I'm like, that's really brave. That is so brave. And I don't want to like spend a second criticizing them or gossiping about them because I'm like, they overcame the fear of all of that in order to make a decision that was best for them. And like, I see that now with so much empathy that I maybe didn't before.
I also think too that when we're judging someone else, it's because somewhere it exists in us as shame. Like it's a part of ourselves that actually exists within us that we have not integrated or owned. So
Yep.
it's just, I think about it a lot. Like if I find myself judging someone, I'm like, am I jealous because I wish I had that and I don't feel worthy of it? Or is that a quality in me that I have a lot of shame around that I haven't fully owned or integrated?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the more the more we get to know all the parts of ourselves, even the parts that are maybe not the best parts, I feel like, yeah, the more we see that. And I also think the more that you get to know yourself, the more patience and empathy you just have for others because, you know, like you've had to see that stuff within yourself and you've had to be stuck within yourself. And so you just have a lot more empathy for the human experience, I think.
Totally. 100%. I mean, if we're gonna leave with one thing, and this is very hard to put into one action or one routine, but over this past year, which has been a year of so much change for you, what is one thing that has helped you build the most self-confidence and self-trust?
I'm going to share what I think has been the biggest reframe for me.
Yes.
I have spent so much time worrying that I'm too old, in too deep, too late. And the biggest reframe for me is that the past is like this immovable, untouchable thing. It's happened, it literally can't be changed. Whereas the future, as much as I sometimes think that it's all planned or figured out or all in the path, the future has infinite paths. So if you're on a path and you're kind of looking ahead and it feels you don't think you're going to be happy there, but you feel too old or too late, there are an infinite number of other possible paths and all of the time that is available to you, all of the time that you can control is in front of you. None of it is behind you. So, like, you are at any moment in your life the youngest you'll ever be. And any decision you make for the future can change the course of your entire life at any point. And so, never are you too late. You are always at the right time with the information that you have now to take a new step and make a new path. And I was so stuck thinking, I'm too old. I've done too much, like, blah, blah. I just had all these like thoughts in my head that were keeping me so stuck because I saw time in such a weird way. And now it's like, no, no, no. Way more of my life is in front of me than behind me. And all of my life that I can control is in front of me. Nothing else is behind me. And that has
Yeah.
changed my life. I will always, 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 always start over. Like if you see me fall on my face, I'm unhappy, I'm gonna totally start again. I don't care how old I am because this perspective has changed my life that much. And so I hope anyone listening to this who feels like, oh, I'm 39, I'm about to turn 40. I don't care. You have 60 years ahead of you. You have infinite time ahead of you. It's not too late. That's my
Marissa, that was so good. It's so true. And I also think I was talking to my friend about this the other day about something unrelated, but I was like, my biggest fear isn't uncertainty. It's not starting over. It's not being alone. It's not making a mistake. My biggest fear is staying in something or not taking the action or not trying or not putting myself out there because I wanna keep it safe. Like, an exceptional life isn't an easy life. It's a fearless life where there are periods of uncertainty, of change, where you can't see the path ahead. You're going to experience pain, but then you're gonna experience incredible joy. And, like, if you want the highs of life, you have to sign up for everything that happens in between those highs. And it makes them so
and
much more people.
yes. A Amen to that. I think that your life sometimes has to get really small in order for it to get really, really, really big.
Yeah, but when it gets really small, you get closer to yourself. And then when it gets really big, you stay connected to yourself that whole time. And that's like the coolest way that you can experience life is an expansive, authentic, massive life full of everything that you love while being connected to yourself. And that's how you build confidence. So if that's the theme of our episode, I think that that's the best way to do it is to not leave yourself throughout that journey.
And things will unfold naturally, easily. When you start doing things from that place, you'll find you don't have to try so hard to find that confidence. It'll you.
100%. Well, thank you all for listening, and we will be back next Tuesday.
Yay. If something in today's conversation resonated with you, take a moment to pause and notice where it's sitting within you.
Living in alignment is not about fixing yourself or becoming someone new. It's about listening, trusting, and slowly coming home to who you already are.
Thank you for spending this time with us and for being part of this community.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who might resonate with it too. See you next time.